Hi, welcome to episode 69 of Talk About the Passion, Why Be Something That You're Not, which of course is named after the Negative Approach song. My guest today is my friend Al Quint. I've known Al for 37 years, which sounds much better to say than close to 40 years. Al was an early influence on my musical journey to punk and hardcore music, but also on countless other people. When you think about people you know from the punk and hardcore scene, like the lifers, not the tourists, who stopped by for a year and then decided the style of music ended when they left. When you think about those people, I'd say 99.9% of them did something in the scene, from like playing in a band, maybe being a DJ, having a zine, booking shows, photographing bands, having a label, yada, yada, yada. Everyone pitched in somehow. Some did all of this and more, including Al. In this 2-hour-long episode, we cover quite a bit of ground, from going to his first shows in Boston at the Rat to see the Plasmatics, and then the Gallery East, to bands he's played in, his record collection, and then I ask him if Tom Brady's going to win another Super Bowl, so you'll have to listen to find out his prediction there. Al and I were in a band together when I was a teenager. We worked together. His mom was a substitute teacher in my junior high, and I had her a couple times, and Al mentions he was doing this around the same time, so maybe I had him as well. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. What I'm trying to say is knowing Al for this long made this conversation extremely easy and comfortable. I've loved every episode I've done of this podcast, but this was definitely one of my favorites so far. A couple more things. You can listen to this podcast where you find all your podcasts. If you hit subscribe, you'll not miss an episode, so that's a good deal. Follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and I keep those pretty current. Okay, I'll stop talking. And this is a long one. I even say one more question, and then we talk for another half hour. So here we go, episode 69 with Al Quint. Thanks for listening. So I'm here with Al Quint, and I've known you now for 37 years, which is
That long.
which is pretty crazy. And I know you from when I was in junior high school. Your mom brought your fanzine into to show us. She was she wasn't a teacher at Swampscott Junior High.
No,
She was
no,
a substitute, right?
Yeah, she was a substitute teacher for quite a while.
Yeah.
I can't believe she did that. That's so funny. I remember she took, I think it was my second issue.
GBH issue, maybe?
Oh, that was a little later. That was issue number 7. I have the artwork for that hanging in my bathroom.
Oh, all right. That Chris Corky, didn't it?
Yeah, Corky did that. Yeah. That's probably my favorite cover, besides the Tesco V one, when he's playing a giant wooden penis.
Yeah, Satan's Pud.
Satan's Pud, that's it. It's the issue that almost got banned from Newbury Comics.
But you grew up in Swampscott, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And Swampscott High School.
Yeah, went to Swampscott High. Graduated, I'm dating myself, I graduated in 1978.
Okay.
And yeah.
And for people listening, Swampscott is a town on the ocean north of Boston. And you were probably the only punk rock person there at that time.
Not true. I got into punk through one of my high school classmates. This guy named Paul Greenberg. Paul, or Greenie, as we called him. He was a DJ at the Salem State Station, WMWM. He was DJing on there when he was in high school already, and he was the first person that I know that I heard playing punk on the radio. There were some other DJs on there, but I had classes with Greenie, and he was telling me about all these different bands, and I heard the Sex Pistols for the first time on his show in like September of '77.
Wow!
So I always like to say that Greenie was my punk rock guru. He's the guy responsible. And there were a few other people in my class into punk, but it definitely wasn't definitely wasn't that widespread in Swampscott High School then.
Yeah, and how? So you were listening to rock music though, like Aerosmith and that
Oh
kind
yeah,
of stuff. And
yeah. I mean, I've been listening to music and getting records since I was like 4 years old.
yeah,
When I was a kid, I had a little red transistor radio, and I would listen to 1510 WMEX, which played rock and roll music, and I'd hear stuff and ask my parents to get me records, and they would. I mean, I was listening to Beatles and Stones, and even like I guess some more, I guess you could say garage stuff like the Blues Magoos and the Electric Prunes. Those were two of my early favorite bands. But I mean, I grew up, pretty much listening to, more hard rock, more guitar-oriented rock. And when I was a teenager, Aerosmith, and a little later Blue Oyster Cult and Ted Nugent. One of my favorites was Sweet. Band that did Ball and Beat. Yeah, they were like one of my favorite bands. But yeah, hard rock and metal a little bit. And then the first, I guess you could say, punk record I ever got was Iggy and the Stooges' Raw Power.
Okay.
Although at the time, how I got into that one is I was a voracious reader of music magazines and music books when I was a kid. I was very socially inept, so I spent most of my time in my room listening to records, reading music magazines, and I had a book called Rock Revolution. I'm looking at it still on my shelf here.
Wow.
And there was a
same
chapter.
copy?
Yeah, I have two copies of it.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, same copy.
Wow.
Yep. No cover. I think I got it for a quarter at some stores. They'd sell books without the front covers for a quarter. And that's how I got mine.
Huh.
But there's a writer named Lester Bangs who wrote for Cream magazine. Cream and Circus were the first two music magazines that I read.
Right.
I'll tell you a funny story about Cream in a few minutes.
Okay.
But Lester, who is probably my biggest writing influence, I've been shamelessly stealing from him for the last almost 40 years.
Yeah.
There was a chapter in this book called The Heavy Metal Kids, and it was about hard rock and metal, kind of traced the history of it, talked about the Who and Deep Purple and Grand Funk and other bands like that, Black Sabbath, of course. And he mentioned Blue Oyster Cult, and he mentioned Iggy and the Stooges. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I'd heard the Stooges up to that point. This was like 76.
Yeah.
So soon after reading that, I was at a head shop called Headlines Boutique in downtown Lynn.
Yeah, right under the bridge there. Yeah.
No, this was across from City Hall. Yeah,
okay.
Across from City Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, but they it was your typical head shop. They sold bongs and pipes and all that stuff, and they had all these tapestries and shirts and.
Yeah.
They had a small box of records on the floor. So I was flipping through them, and I see this record with this really kind of freaky-looking guy. It's like, oh, what's this? I turn it over. It says Iggy and the Stooges, Raw Power. And it's like, oh, that's the record I just read about recently. So I had the guy working there put it on, and it's like literally like 10 seconds into hearing Search and Destroy, it's like sold. $3, and it didn't leave my turntable like for weeks after that.
Right.
And at the time, I thought it was a good hard rock record, whatever, but it was like nothing I'd ever heard before.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, that was probably the first punk record I ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from then, you started getting into the more sort of like Blue Oyster Cult is a more commercially band later, but at that point they were kind of an underground or just sort of more of an outsider rock band because of their lyrics and. They were definitely a weird band.
It was just before Don't Fear the Reaper came out. Actually, the first record I got by them was the double LP of the live album On Your Feet or On Your Knees.
Yeah, that's their
best.
I mean,
this is after reading. I read about them in the same book, and it's a pretty good record. But not long after, I was back at Headlines Boutique again, and they had their third album, Secret Treaties, and it's like. Wow, this is great. So I started working my way backwards and got their first 3 records. And then right after that, Don't Fear the Reaper, became a hit.
Yeah.
But,
so where were you able to buy records? And so there was Headlines. Was Popcorn Records around in Vinnon Square? There?
Yeah. Well, to backtrack a little, I mean, I bought mostly 45s when I was, like young, like after my parents bought me records when I was a kid, and like by the time I got to be 10 or 11, I was starting to buy my own records. I started to buy 45s. There was a store on Market Street in Lynn called Mass Camera.
Yeah.
And they had a small little record section, and I bought 45s there. There was Lynn Music in downtown Lynn. I'd go to, you remember Ann and Hope, the department store?
Yeah.
Over in Denver?
Yeah.
They had like all these crazy sales on 45s. You could get them for like 44 cents each or whatever. And Caldor and Leechmere and Jordan Marshall, they all had record departments.
Yeah.
Popcorn I think opened a little later, probably like 78 or so, 77, 78. But I started taking trips, and also, you mentioned Headlines Boutique, and I used to get a lot of records at like Goodwill and the Salvation Army. Like I'd see like a 50-cent record bin, and I'd see like a cover that looks cool. Like, oh, I'll take a shot at this. This looks pretty neat. I'll take it home. And that's how I got Blue Cheers, Vince and Bessie Rupton album. I got it for 50 cents at a Goodwill.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, when I was a senior in high school, I was listening to hard rock and metal, and then I started reading a little bit about it, about punk music, and I heard Greenie's show, and I started listening to his show, and then he told me about this other radio station called WTBS, which was the MIT station.
Yeah.
And there was a DJ on there named Oedipus, and I mean, he just, once again, totally opened my eyes to a lot of great music, and I started taping stuff off the radio. I mean, that's how I got into it, listening to the radio, reading about it.
Yeah.
I first started going into Boston. There was a store. There were a couple of really good stores downtown Boston. There was one called Discount Records, and they had a lot of punk singles.
Oh,
so, I made a few trips there.
Yeah.
And then I started. Also, I should mention the Record Exchange as well in Salem.
Yeah.
Started going there in like '77. I got the Dead Boys album there. I remember that was one of my first purchases.
That's crazy. That store still exists, not in the same spot.
I know.
It still exists.
Different location.
Yeah.
They kept it going. Great store. I always used to find lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I graduated from Swampscott, and I went to Boston University.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started getting more records. There, I lived near Kenmore Square, and there was a great record store called Nuggets, which is still around, but it's not what it was. But Nuggets, you'd go in, and they had lots of stuff. They had piles of all new records, promo copies. You could get like all these new records for like $4 a pop. And there was also another record store on the other side of Kenmore called New England Music City.
Yeah.
And they had some good stuff. And I'm still kicking myself for not buying the Misfits singles they had for $1.50 each.
That's crazy.
I didn't know who they were at the time. It's like I signed up. It's like, oh. So totally missed out there. But so I started BU in fall of '78, and the drinking age was still 18 then, so you could go to bars and clubs. And of course, the first place I wanted to go was the Rat.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine came to visit, and we went there that fall, and we saw this really horrible bar band called the Stompers.
Oh, Sal Bagley.
Basically bargain basement.
Yeah.
Yeah, bargain basement Bruce Springsteen or bargain basement Outside Johnny.
Yeah.
The first punk show I saw there was the Plasmatics.
Oh, okay.
And then I saw the Clash a few weeks after that at the Harvard Square Theater. So that was the thing. Was growing up, like I said, I was pretty socially inept and didn't have a lot of friends, and I didn't really go to any concerts. I didn't go to any concerts until I got to college.
Yeah.
The Clash was my first real concert.
Yeah.
But I started going to clubs. I go to the Rat, the Paradise. Went to Cantone's down by in the financial district a few times. The club over in Cambridge, which was later Night Stage.
Yeah.
But I was.
And you're going alone to these shows?
At first, that was the thing. When I went to Plasmatics, I always say it was my first real punk show, and there weren't a lot of people in my dorm at BU that were into punk. There was one guy down the hall, Jim Kaufman, who later ended up managing Mission of Burma, and he also ran a club called the Underground, which I never made it to, unfortunately. But Jimmy was the only guy on my floor that was really into punk.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went by myself to see the Plasmatics, and I got in there, didn't know anyone there. It was it was dark and kind of scary and all that, and
Yeah.
kind of just keeping to myself. And people like saying, "Did you get beat up?" It's like, no, I said, they're you just didn't know anyone. And the first band was the Malls, Molls, and I remember they had an electric bassoon player, and they were pretty cool. But then they started showing like promotional videos of the Plasmatics,
right?
And the videos end, and the lights come on, and they start playing, and it's like just incredible,
yeah,
and it's just so much raw energy. And she chainsawed the guitar at the end of the set, so that was my first real punk show there. But yeah, I mean, so in February '79, I met the woman who is now my wife, Ellen. We've been together almost 42 years.
Wow.
And she started going to shows with me occasionally.
Yeah.
After that, the thing is, Ellen had never really heard punk before she met me. She listened to soft rock mostly, but she'd go with me to she went with me to clubs, and I remember going to she'd go with me to see bands like the Undertones and stuff, Little Fingers, and I remember there was a club in Kenmore called Celebration. They did like a afternoon matinee with La Peste playing an early Boston punk band, and she went with me to that one.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, basically, that's how I got into all this stuff.
So that guy from that was that from WM Greenie. Are you still in touch with him? Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's alive. He's on once in a great while. He's on Facebook. I'll hear from him once in a great while. But I stayed with him. I stayed with him pretty much, the whole time over the years. He ended up after he eventually ended up working in the music biz for a while. I know he worked for Capitol Records. I think he used to come into Rocket occasionally, in fact. But he's still around. But yeah.
Nice.
So like I said, so that so I went to Boston University, and I graduated in 1982.
Yeah.
But the thing was, it's like, I got into the original punk stuff, and I was, I always, like cutting edge music and all that, and I got to see a ton of great shows while I was there.
Yeah.
And around 81 or so was when hardcore was really starting to get going in Boston.
Right.
And it just, seemed like a breath of fresh air. I was kind of slow, kind of going to the hardcore shows. There was a club in Boston called Streets that I started going to in 81, and that's when I saw some of my first, more or less hardcore shows like TSOL and Antipasti.
Yeah.
I saw Black Flag for the first time there.
What was that lineup?
It was Black Flag, and this band called Vitamin opened for them, this kind of art punk band who came out in drag, and that went over really well with some of the people there.
Who was in Black Flag at that point? 81 would have been, was that Rollins?
It was the Damaged. Henry Dez. With Billy Stevenson on drums, because Robo couldn't get that. They were just coming back from England, and Robo couldn't get into, so they had Billy Stevenson playing drums with him.
Oh wow!
But I didn't really know these people at first. Like the whole Boston hardcore people. The first time I really encountered them at all was when Antipasti played their UK punk band, and a friend of mine worked at Streets, and he said, you want to get downstairs and meet him? I was like, cool, yeah. So I go downstairs, we go into the room where they are, and there's like 20 of the Boston hardcore people, these like skinheads, and just are scowling at us with the whole like, what the hell are you doing in here? Look. So we got out of there kind of quickly, but I gradually got to know the people over time, and like I said, I was starting to listen to more of the hardcore stuff, and then in the spring of '82, just before I graduated, I got what I consider like 3 very crucial compilations: Flex Your Head, which was all the DC hardcore bands, Punk and Disorderly, which was my introduction to a lot of the UK punk bands, like, '82 era punk bands. And This Is Boston, Not LA, which was, of course, the Boston hardcore compilation.
Right.
So those are 3 really important records.
Yeah. When was Process
then
of
right
Elimination, that comp, that 7-inch, was that around that same time?
That came out, it might have come out in late 81, early 82, but then I didn't hear it until like the summer of 82.
Okay.
But yeah, so I graduated from BU, and about that time was when I was starting to go see hardcore bands. They like I guess you could say more DIY type shows. I went to my first show was at the Gallery East. I remember the date, June 12th, 1982. I have the flyer on my wall here.
Yeah.
And it was Minor Threat, SSD, FUs, and the Proletariat. And they had Minor Threat play second because they were worried the show was going to get shut down, which it didn't, but they had Minor Threat.
Right.
And it was just like, I had just seen Bad Brains for the first time a few weeks before that at a small club called Maverick.
Yeah.
And that was the show where they showed up at like 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that story.
And just loaded in, no sound check, no nothing, played an all hardcore set for like 15 or 20 minutes. And it's still one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So a few weeks after that, or like a month and a half after that, I saw Minor Threat.
Yeah.
And it's like just totally opened my eyes. It's like, wow, it just totally kicked my ass.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Process of Elimination. There was a show there the following month with Negative Approach and Necros and the Meatmen. And once again, just kind of my introduction. I still wasn't really interacting with the people. Didn't really know them yet. But it was just, totally mind-blowing to me. And I was starting to hear a lot of the hardcore stuff on some of the local radio shows.
Yeah.
WERS had Emerson College had a hardcore show called Faster Than You that Choke from Slapshot Negative FX co-hosted with a woman named Katie the cleaning lady. Yeah. And Katie booked a lot of shows. She was a DJ and, heard a lot of stuff on there. See, I was kind of starting to immerse myself a little bit more, into the hardcore thing and getting inspired. And I decided that I wanted to start writing about it.
Yeah.
I'd done a little writing for another zine called Concentration X. Did some record reviews for them, and kind of decided I wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
So what I did was, late August, early September of '82, I sat down at my typewriter and typed out 4 pages of record reviews and live reviews.
Yeah.
Left the front page, I left the top of the front page blank because I didn't even know what I was going to call it yet.
Right.
So after I finished typing, I said, okay, what am I going to call this thing? And I said, well, I live in the suburbs and I like punk, so we'll call it Suburban Punk.
Yeah.
And I gave it to my dad, and he ran it off at his work, ran me off 50 copies, and I took them to the next show I went to and sold them for $25 outside the show.
Oh, wow.
And I did 2 runs. I think there were 90 copies of the first issue.
Yeah.
This is I'm going to get back to. You mentioned my mom bringing the zines to school. Well, when I wanted to do my second issue, remember ditto machines or mimeograph machines where you could turn the crank and copies? Yeah, ditto machine. Yeah. So Hadley School in Swampscott had a ditto machine. And the next issue I typed up nine single-sided pages, and I went to Hadley and ran off like 90 copies of my second issue. Cranked out the pages and then collated them and stapled them, and had a Xerox picture of Discharge, threw that on the cover, and that was issue number 2.
That's awesome.
So
maybe that's the one I saw. Maybe I don't know. It was. I mean, I was in junior high in 1982, so maybe it was that second one.
Yeah, it was late 80, because the one with GBH on the cover came out like the middle of 84.
Yeah, so it would have been, I was already in high school in 84, so.
Yeah, it's probably my second issue, but, and it's funny because I substitute taught in late 82 in Swampscott for a little bit when I was between jobs. Yeah, so it was a very interesting time. I just graduated from college. I was starting to really get into, hardcore, getting involved in the hardcore scene. And I'd also taken my first post-collegiate job working for the Zaire retail chain. It was a discount retail chain. They had a new management trainee program, so that was that was the only job offer I got coming out of college. So so I ended up doing that. Ended up doing that, and this was like the same time I was really starting to get into hardcore. And that was kind of opening my mind up to things and kind of getting me thinking about, you know, taking control of my life and not doing what I didn't want.
Right.
So
so you were identifying a lot of the lyrics with some of these bands, obviously, at that age too.
Yeah. I was starting to. I kind of embraced the straight edge thing for a bit. I mean, I'd never been really much of a partier anyway, but that.
Right.
But then I started, you know, later that summer, I saw MDC for the first time. They have more of a political edge to their lyrics and some of the other bands. So that started influencing my thinking, I guess you could say, a little bit.
Yeah.
So I ended up quitting theirs after 5 months because I just, you know, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I quit that, and then after that, I ended up taking a job in a bank for 2 years, which really turned me into an angry guy.
Yep.
So, you know, I started my zine. I was gradually, just a gradual process of building everything up and making contact, finally meeting some of the people in Boston, and so started to increase the print run, started going to a real printer for the zine, and, you know, getting this distribution around the country, trading with people, sending my zine to Maximum Rock and Roll, which was a big, you know, international hardcore zine, like the hardcore zine.
Yeah.
And that's how I made a lot of contacts, you know, writing for them, but also they had classified ads in the back.
Yeah.
And, you know, people would want to trade records or flyers or correspond. So I started doing that. And,
right.
You know, got a network of people all over the world who I, you know, exchange letters and exchange records and things like that, fanzines, flyers.
Yeah.
And like I said, this was when I was working at a bank. I worked at a bank for 2 years, and I really hated it because it kind of was running contrary to the way I felt about the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and, you know, like it's the high point of my day after a horrible day of work, going home. I had a 1-room apartment in Lynn.
Yeah.
And I would, you know, there'd be all, you know, getting home, the most exciting part of the day with all the packages sitting by the door, you know, records or
letters,
you know, like all these treasures that still showed up, and taking them upstairs and, you know, throwing on the records, and just, you know, just perfect escape, perfect release from the previous 8 hours of misery.
Yeah. Now going back a little to like those early, like the Gallery East, when you saw a band like the Bad Brains or Minor Threat, did they stick out as like, you know, these are going to be, like, at the time, do you see them as different than, you know, the Proletariat or the FUs or that kind of, you know?
Well, I heard the Proletariat before they were even on Boston, not LA. They were always more of a post-punk band anyway.
Yeah.
I first heard them in like 1980 or early 81. They had a song called Abstain that was getting played on college radio.
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised when I saw them in Boston, not LA. But
right.
Yeah, I should mention this radio show called Media Blitz that was on, well, WTBS eventually became WMBR.
Okay.
And there was a Friday afternoon show called Media Blitz that played all West Coast punk and hardcore, and that's how I got exposed to a lot of that stuff. And that was stuff that stood out, you know, like hearing more Black Flag, hearing Germs, Adolescence, DOA, you know, Circle Jerks, bands like that for the first time, and TSOL, and those all stood out quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I first found out about the DC hardcore scene. We mentioned Chris Corkum before.
Yeah.
Who's a longtime friend of mine, and he was a DJ at WMWM. And I first met him standing in line at a Psychedelic Furs show in 1981. And we were talking about bands, and he mentioned the band called SOA. And I said, DOA? No, SOA. They're from Washington, D.C. So a little while after that, I was at Rocket Records. And, hey, that's a store I haven't mentioned yet. That was that was also a great record store that I started going to in '81. I'd heard ads for it on there was a local station, WLYN, with a DJ named Rich Angeloon, who started playing punk type music, alternative type music, and they always had ads for this place called Rocket Records. So I finally made it up there, and it's like, wow, I always so much great stuff there.
Yeah.
And I eventually ended up working there for 8 years. They got tired of me coming in all the time. They asked me a couple of times, to come work there. And finally, after I had enough of the bank, I took them up on it and said, okay, I'll work here now.
Yeah. We worked together for a long time there too.
Yeah, we worked together. That was fun.
Yeah, it was. And it wasn't as good as it was before we started working there, certainly. Because we were there in the 90s.
It was better.
Yeah.
Well, I was there from 85 to 93.
Yeah.
But I lost track of what we were talking about. So you were asking me like bands. I mentioned SOA.
Oh, the DC scene. Yeah, so you're talking to Chris
DC
Corp
scene.
about SOA.
Yeah, he mentioned SOA, and a few months later I was at Rocket, and I saw the SOA 7-inch in there. And it's like, oh, this looks interesting. Wow, 10 songs on one single. Let me pick this up. And I took it home, and it's like, oh, yeah, it's pretty great. And then I started finding out about the DC scene.
Yeah.
And I actually went to Washington, D.C. right before I graduated from college. There was I got a second interview for a retail chain down there.
Huh.
And I really wasn't planning on moving to D.C., but I figured, well, free trip to D.C., maybe I can do some record shopping while I'm down there. So I went down, did the interview, then I went to Georgetown, and that's when I got some more Discord records. I got the Minor Threat Solar 7-inch and Youth Brigade's Possible EP.
Oh wow!
So I was starting to hear all the DC hardcore stuff, and but yeah, in terms of bands staying out, Minor Threat totally stood out to me at the time. Bad Brains stood out to me.
Yeah.
Bands that just had high energy, but also had catchy and memorable songs as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was getting into all of it, getting into a lot of different stuff, and mentioned Process of Elimination, that tour. That's when I saw Negative Approach, who were still one of the greatest live bands I'd ever seen. I'd only heard one song by them up to that point, and they came on, and it was like, holy shit! It's like, where did these guys come from? Their vocalist, this big, stocky skinhead guy with like veins bulging out on his forehead, and it's like, this is something that is really, I'm really into, and like I said, that kind of led to me wanting to start writing about it.
Yeah, and there's like there's a lot of famous, like iconic Boston pictures, like the like sort of later on there's that Youth of Today record cover, the Boston Not LA cover. And then there's the picture from June 12th, 1983. Of you on stage with Ian MacKaye and Mark Tobin.
Oh yeah,
and
me and Mark Tobin and this other guy named Dave. No, Paul. I forget his last name. Long time, but it's Minor Threat. Like I said, I can't remember what I did last week. And I remember dates for certain shows. I remember, Minor Threat played June 12th, 1982 at the Gallery East, and they played the following March at the Mount Auburn VFW in Cambridge.
Okay.
And that was a pretty legendary show. Minor Threat, SSD, FUs. I don't remember the Necros played. The Necros might have played.
Yeah.
The Necros canceled. The Meatmen played instead. But and then they played June 12th, 1983 at the Channel, and I got up on stage, got my picture taken singing with Minor Threat with Ian.
Yeah.
And then I remember falling off the stage, taking a stage dive and scratching up my shoulder pretty well. And Ellen was with me, and on the way back from the show, we stopped at this fried seafood place in Revere.
Yeah.
And I remember running into the custodian from the bank I was working at, all sweaty, all banged up, and he was kind of looking at me and said, "What have you been doing?" I don't think people knew I was into music and kind of knew a little bit about what I did, but it wasn't like typical. It wasn't something you'd typically expect like a bank teller to be doing.
Yeah.
So
well, I was going to say, you took me to my first show in January of '84, and I think you got your nose busted at the it was the Channel 3 and Crouch show.
Oh, that you went to see it?
I
honestly don't remember that. I remember getting punched. Yeah. It was during Crouch. I got sucker punched in the face by some big skinhead dude. And it was like he was going one way, I was going the other way. And he sucker punched me.
Yeah.
And I got a cracked nose, but I had a friend of mine with me there who was a lot bigger than me and was as big as him, and he saw what happened to me. And he went up behind this guy and landed a nice little forearm to the back of his head and dropped him. And that's my friend Andy, who I still talk to and I'm still very good friends with to this day.
Oh yeah,
Andy T. Yeah. So, it's amazing. I went to all these, punk and hardcore shows, and I didn't really get hurt that many times, just a few times.
I know.
I didn't get hurt too bad falling off the stage at minus. Just a few scrapes and scratches.
Yeah. So now you're doing the zine. When did you start interviewing bands?
My first interview, I believe, was a phone interview with Rick from Jerry's Kids. And this may have been for issue. I think I talked to DOA for a few minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like a full interview, but I talked to DOA and wrote a little bit about that. But I interviewed Rick from Jerry's Kids over the phone, and the tape didn't come out, so I just had to kind of paraphrase everything he said.
Yeah.
I did mail interviews. I interviewed Negative Approach through the mail and sang through the mail, and I think the first in-person interview I might have done was with Kraut. Speaking of Kraut, I did an interview with them.
Yeah.
And then they complained I didn't get the quotes right after that.
Oh, Jesus.
But it's funny. I really had a tough time interviewing bands at first. I mean, I still do. I got better at it, I suppose, over time. But I was not really good at interviewing bands, and they tend to be a little bit short. Sometimes I'd end up not using them. But gradually started feeling a little more comfortable, and it was always cool talking to bands who inspired me, and most of them were cool. A few weren't, but most were. I think the interview that really kind of opened everything up, that after my 10th issue, I changed the name of the zine to Suburban Voice, because I was starting to include a lot more political type content. I mean, this is '84, the Reagan era. I was really just pissed off about everything, so I started including some commentary.
Yeah.
And I decided to change the name to Suburban Voice so it wouldn't just be pigeonholed as a punk zine, but I mean, it's still pretty much stayed a punk zine. But I interviewed a band from Chicago called Articles of Faith, who are a political hardcore band who I really liked. And that was what I kind of viewed as a turning point. That was like the first, what I really felt was like in-depth interview where we covered a lot of territory. And I think it really increased my confidence to interview bands after that.
And that's Vic Bondi, right?
Yeah, Vic Bondi. Yep.
Was that your first time meeting him?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the first time I saw them. I only saw them a few times. This was in Western Mass. This was at the Pulaski Hall in East Hampton, and the show was Husker Du, Articles of Faith, this band from Canada called Personality Crisis, and there were a few other bands.
Yeah.
And I remember before the show I was playing Frisbee outside with Bob and Grant from Husker Du.
Huh.
And I also remember that when I interviewed Articles of Faith, they had a Mr. T air freshener hanging off the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
But I mean, that kind of just opened me up. It also kind of opened up my, opened up my way of thinking, opened up my thinking, kind of got me to think about different issues. And I don't know, perhaps I maybe took some musicians' viewpoints or political views at face value without always necessarily like thinking about it as much as I should. But it kind of after that, soon after that, it kind of got to the point where, why am I working at a bank? This is not what I am. This is not what I want to do. This is kind of opposed to everything I stand for.
Yeah.
So I left there, ended up going to work at Rocket Records, and that was a much better fit.
Yeah, yeah. And then you were rolling pretty hard with the fanzine at that point.
So throughout the 80s, I was publishing fairly regularly. I actually also found different and creative ways to print the zine.
Yeah.
And some of it was through help with my friend Mike Gitter, who did Triple X fanzine, and he also later promoted shows, and we did a lot of stuff in the music biz over the years.
Yeah.
But we started doing our zines around the same time. He started a few months after me.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 months after I did. So we kind of grew up together in the scene. We were in a band called No System together for a little while until we kicked them out after 2 shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gitter was a good friend, and we kind of inspired each other to, build up our fanzines and our work and all that. And after, like, I think starting with the 11th issue, there was this guy who I won't mention my name because he always gets pissed when I mention this. I think he could still get in trouble, but I had a friend who worked at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Office.
Yeah.
And I think Gitter, I don't know if Gitter set this up or I set it up. He offered to print my zine. He had access to a high-speed Xerox machine, and he offered to print it basically, I think, like 500 copies for $50.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So that's, and I think I was, at that point, I was between jobs, so I kind of needed the dough. And that since there wasn't much in the way of cost, I was able to make some dough off of doing the zine there.
Yeah.
So I did 4 issues with him.
Oh, wow.
And then Gitter found there's a company that made fashion magazines, and it was a family business, and the son of the owner would do both our zines like after hours, like print out uncollated sheets, like 1,000 copies uncollated, and they have some people come over to the house and we put the pages together and staple them. But that was also really cheap. I think that was like under $100 to do that.
Wow.
But after that, I eventually started going to that kind of faded, and I eventually started going to a regular printer after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I think Gitter found that printer as well. He definitely helped. In terms of definitely helped us get find ways to print the zines.
Yeah. It was. I think it was cool to have your zine and his zine sort of running simultaneously because they were both really good, So, and then we had
the old
Smash. Was that Jed Hresco's zine for a little while? And
yeah. Smash started the same time as mine. We both were selling our first issues at the same show.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah. Jed did I think about 7 issues.
Yeah.
He stopped. There was also a zine called Alternative Focus, which Mark McKay did.
Yeah.
Him with this guy Patrick Smith, who became like a really an airline pilot. Yeah, and he wrote books about airplanes and became but and there was Conflict, which kind of started before ours. Gerard Cosley, and Gerard covered a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
He was pretty eclectic and very opinionated, and I always got a kick out of reading his reviews.
Yeah. And of course, Forced Exposure was the...
Forced Exposure. And by the way, Katie, the cleaning lady, should get credit. She co-founded Forced Exposure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't really know Jimmy Johnson. Believe it or not, I really don't know Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
But yeah, Forced Exposure. I mean, they started around the same time I did. Might have, probably like a month or two before I started my zine. They started. Yeah. And there was also a newspaper called Take It, which started. They used to include flexi discs, and they covered like some underground and punk stuff as well.
Huh.
They had a flexi disc that had the Circle Jerks, the Angry Samoans, and Dead Kennedys on it.
Oh wow!
With one of the issues.
That's crazy.
Flipper was on it too. Yeah.
This has to be, Boston. We have so many schools here, so it must be the part of the reason why we had so many zines and cool. We had so many great college radio stations here, and WM was also. When I was getting into hardcore, I was recording Chris Corcom's show on WMWM.
Yep.
Record songs.
Yep. Corky had a great show. Carl D'Agostino was a really good DJ. Dave Dodge was on there. They had some good DJs, but WMBR really became a go-to station. I mentioned there was a show called the Demi Moans, but they played a lot of punk and hardcore stuff. And WERS, Emerson College, had some great stuff. That Boston College station, WZBC.
Yeah.
So we were definitely fortunate to have great radio here.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to talking a little bit about the production of the zines. We were just talking about that. I mean, this is the pre-internet era, and pretty much personal computers haven't really broken through. So, how I'd produce my zine is I would type everything up, And then when nobody was looking at work at the bank, I'd like Xerox it, like to make the print smaller.
Right.
And then I'd take it home. And cut and paste it with an X-Acto knife. And I used those Letraset letters but yeah, it was like very, very primitive production quality.
Yeah.
And I didn't get my first like personal computer. I got a Mac like in '89, and that's when I started doing the zine with my computer. But before that, it was all cut and paste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how.
Yeah, the dark ages.
And that's how everything was being done. And at that, it was the beginning of that stuff for a lot of people. For the fanzines, putting out your own records, booking shows. It was all. People like you guys were inventing that stuff essentially, and paving the way for people in the future. So, and people still do that now. They do the cut and paste zines and that kind of stuff. So it's cool to hear that's how you started.
Not as much though. I mean, obviously print zines have kind of gone by the wayside in recent years. I mean, Max and Rock and Roll, who, like I said earlier, was a very important resource for me and really opened me up to exploring, the international punk and hardcore scene.
Yeah.
And I started writing for them in '84. I started doing some articles, and then they used to have scene reports where people would send in, reports about bands and happenings. And I was the Boston scene reporter for a while, and then I went out there and met the MR&R people, and like I said, it just kind of opened everything up, and got me exposed, that through MR&R and other zines. That was a very important source of information. I mean, obviously everyone gets their info online now, and instant gratification, and it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I love the instant gratification. I love the being able to check out any band in like 2 seconds, but there was something special, like I said, about, going to the post office or going home and just, bringing home a, bunch of, packages of records and zines and all that.
Yeah, spending a day reading a whole through a zine was great. And you'd be writing all the different bands you wanted to then go search for down. And so, yeah.
Yep. And then, like, writing, like... And writing away, like I'll see like an ad for a band or whatever, and I'll send them a copy of the zine and say, hey, is it possible you could send me a review copy of it? And I'll send you back a copy of the review, and I could do that.
Yeah.
Record labels started sending me stuff too, which was, as I built up my following a little bit, I started getting stuff for review.
Yeah.
Started getting in the shows for free. That was a nice little perk as well.
Yeah. Going back to MRR, what was it like visiting there for the first time?
Well, I went there a few times. And the first time I went, I was out there in March of '85. It was my first trip to the Bay Area.
Yeah.
First time go see band. Got to see some sick bands. I got to see Dr. No. I got to see Blast, who I never even heard of before. Then I went to the metal show and saw Possessed.
Oh,
that was pretty sick.
That's awesome.
But I actually stayed most of the time, and I was out there with a guy named Mel Cheplowitz, who later did a record label called Shredder.
Yeah.
And he was a DJ. I connected with him, being pen pals. But my last night in the Bay Area, I went to the MR&R house. It was in Berkeley, California.
Yeah.
Berkeley at the time. It was like a much smaller place, and I went on to the radio show with them for a little bit, but interesting group of people staying there. It was me, it was Pusshead, and 2 people who did a zine called Leading Edge, and one of those guys, Martin Sprouse, eventually became one of the coordinators at MR&R. But my second trip out there, they had moved to San Francisco, and it was like above the Castro neighborhood, and it was just like this hill that pretty much went up at like a 45-degree angle. It was like brutal. I could still my feet, my shins still hurt thinking about that. But I stayed there for a week, and I had access to the record collections. I got the tape. I taped all this stuff when I was there, and I appeared on the radio show again. And this is kind of a funny story. There was a band staying there called Unseen Force. one or two of those guys went on to be in the band Guar.
Oh, okay.
But, really nice people. I hadn't heard their stuff before. I just, some of those guys had been in the band White Cross before, who were an early Richmond hardcore band. So anyway, Tim Yohannan, who was the head guy at MR&R, and he also, did the radio show. In fact, Maximum Rock and Roll started as a radio show before it became a magazine.
Right.
But he thought it'd be a great idea if I interviewed Unseen Force on the air without actually having heard their music.
Yeah.
And it went surprisingly well.
Yeah.
I suppose it's kind of like a Larry King thing. Larry King
Right.
had just passed away. He said he used to interview people without reading the books. I suppose interviewing a band without hearing the records
right.
kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those guys were always great to me. I really missed Tim. He was very confrontational, very single-minded about, what he thought about was punk, wasn't punk, and he used to give me a hard time. I was from Boston. I was into bands I was into New York hardcore bands like Agnostic Front and the Cro-Mags and all that, and I was friendly with the FUs and who did the infamous interview with them about their album My America, which is a total parody of patriotism.
Yeah.
And and Tim totally fell for it. And, so he thought the FUs were like these right wing fascist guys. So it's like he was like, since I was like friendly with the FUs and I liked some of these New York hardcore bands who might not have had the most enlightened lyrics, which I didn't really agree with, to be honest. But he was convinced I was like this right wing guy, which couldn't be further from the truth.
I know, right?
Yeah. But I missed Tim. Tim was always great to me. And, but yeah, Maximum Rock and Roll just stopped doing their print zine in 2019.
Yeah.
And I've been a columnist since 2005, and I did a few. They continued as an online zine, and I continued with them for a little while after that, but it wasn't the same, so I stepped down from there last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I miss the print scene. It just wasn't the same. It's something really rewarding about seeing your work in print. You know?
Yeah.
Something tangible. Yeah. Something permanent.
Yeah, exactly. Do you ever? This is moving forward a little bit. Do you ever see putting out a book of Suburban Voice issues collected, or like something similar to the Triple X or the
I've been saying that for the last 20 years. People have been telling me all the time I should do a book, and I agree. I should do a book.
Yeah.
The thing is, I am not the most efficient person. I tend to procrastinate and drag my feet.
Right.
The last print issue of Suburban Voice was in 2003.
Yeah.
My 45th issue.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be my last issue, but I had some stuff. I had some stuff going on in my personal life at that point, and the zine kind of took a back seat to everything. And after things improved, it had been a couple of years, and I was writing and continuing to write. It's like, well, maybe I should just do it as a blog until I do another print issue. And it's almost 18 years now since I did a print issue, and I keep saying I am going to try to do one more.
Yeah.
But that still hasn't happened. Yeah, I want to do a book, and I actually had a few publishers have expressed some interest about it if I ever get my shit together.
Yeah,
so you might see it happen.
Yeah.
I never say never. Who knows? I mean, I got stuff written. People say, why don't you do like a compilation of all your old issues? And truth be told, for like the first 10 issues or so, I don't know if I want some of that stuff printed again, because it wasn't for me. I think I got a little better as a writer over time, a little better as an interviewer, and wasn't that great at first.
Yeah, I did that zine for 3 issues that I had, and I will not show. Every once in a while I'll post stuff from that online, but it is, like, the writing in there is terrible. It's really bad.
Was it one step ahead or one step forward?
One step forward. I got to interview some cool people. I interviewed Andre from Marginal Man and Lyle Pressler and I don't know. Pete Stahl from Scream. So it was fun, but my writing as a 14-year-old wasn't very good. But I was 14.
Speaking of Pete from Scream, remember, people might know or might not know that Christian and I were in a band together called Shattered Silence, and we're still going to do another show at some point. We're going to do a live video cast, hopefully, sometime this year, but we'll see about that. But anyway, our band opened for Scream at TT's, and before we played, Pete asked me how much we were getting paid.
Yeah.
And I told him, it wasn't very much, and he just looked at me and said, "That's all." He said, "See me after the show." And afterwards, I went in to say goodbye, and he put stuffed some money into my hand and said, "Here, take that." Yeah. So paid us out of their own money because he didn't think we were getting enough. And it's such a great guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. We got some. That was one, bonus being in a band with you, is you had connections. So we played with 7 Seconds. That Scream show.
7 Seconds.
We played with No Effects up in Portsmouth, maybe with Screaming
I
Broccoli.
remember
that was way late '80s.
That was before No Effects became really popular. They couldn't even get a show in Boston at that point.
Yeah.
7 Seconds. Our guitar player met his first wife at that show.
Oh wow, huh?
Remember that?
George, you're right. Yeah, George. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Met his first wife, and unfortunately, that didn't last very long. But that was. With a couple of friends of mine, I introduced one of my friends to George, and they ended up getting married soon after that, and it didn't work out. But they're both happy now, so that's all that matters. That's what. And I remember them when 7 Seconds put out their live record. They thanked Shattered Silence because they played with us.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
And let's talk about some of that. So you had a band called Isolated way back was that with Mark Tobio and?
Yeah, it was Isolated Youth.
Youth.
It was Isolated was a project I did later on. I'll talk about that in a few. But Isolated Youth, I met Mark at Rocket Records, and this was just after I started doing my zines. So I guess we were acquainted a little bit. Yeah. He mentioned this band. He said, "Oh, we're looking for a bass player. Do you know anyone?" I said, "Well, I can play bass a little bit because the year when I was still at BU, my roommate Jonathan." I was talking about wanting to learn how to play bass, and Jonathan's younger brother, basically, taught me how to play. Gave me a few pointers and let me borrow his huge Rickenbacker bass, and I practiced on that. And wasn't really that great at it, but so anyway, I met Mark, and I said I can play bass a little bit. Don't have an amp, and I didn't have a bass at the time either. So, but what I did was guy I knew, I bought a bass off the guy for $25, and they had a PA, and I just plugged straight into the PA, and we played. I played one show with them at some high school party, and then I left because I got a job and I couldn't really devote myself to doing that. So that was my first band. We never did anything. I have a practice tape that no one should ever hear. And after that, in '84, Mike Gitter and I started a band called No System, and we booted Mike after 2 shows. He was the vocalist, I played bass, and Mike wasn't very good, so we kicked him out of the band. But we still stayed friends, and we were 3-2 for a while, and I eventually became the vocalist, and we were together for a few years. Yeah. There was one show that was a complete debacle where we were supposed to open for Suicidal Tendencies at the Paradise.
I have that written down here with something to ask you about. If you want to tell that story.
Were you at that show?
I was at that show. I think you should tell that story.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Oh, God. With me in my plaid shorts. What happened was, this was, we formed in 80. Yeah, No System got together in '84. There were some personnel changes, and I got booted out of the band for a while. Yeah. But then we decided to get back together in summer of '86 and play some shows. And one of the shows we got booked was opening for Suicidal Tendencies. And we were supposed to go on at 3:15. It was a matinee, and Suicidal hadn't showed up yet. So they kept delaying our set, and they still hadn't heard from them. So they finally had us go on about 5:15 in front of 600 very angry and pissed off Suicidal Tendencies fans. Yeah. And we opened our set with Kiss's Detroit Rock City, which did not go over very well. And I always wondered, like, it's like I didn't think we played that badly, but then I saw a video of the show a while after that, and I didn't realize that while I was up front, the guitarist and the bass player were behind me making the most ridiculous cock rock star like moves and stage moves, and I think, that's why they hated us. And Suicidal never showed up.
Yeah, was that Doug?
He never showed.
That lineup.
What's that?
Do you have Doug McKinnon on drums with that?
McKinnon was on drums. Yeah, that lineup. Yeah, it was me. It was Doug and the guitarist and bass player who I don't want to talk about. And but
they never showed up.
Yeah, they never showed, and we got paid $100, and the promoter of the show took 15% off of that, so we ended up with $85 for our trouble.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I did that. Then I was in a band, and then I did Shattered Silence with you guys.
Yeah.
Which was fun.
Yeah.
And after that, I was in a band called NPD, Non-Police Dictatorship, for about 6 months playing bass.
Yeah.
And the Isolated thing was a project I did with a couple of guys. Scott and Tim, who played in a band called V-Card, which is like '94.
Yeah.
Isolated was a tribute to my first band. We recorded like I think 3 cover versions of different. We recorded Subhumans, Minor Threat, and Adolescence covers. And I put out a 7-inch, and most of them are still sitting in my closet. So it's kind of a dumb idea.
I have one of those.
Yeah. Oh God, you want some more? I'll give them to you. You can give them to your friend. I also had a record label for a little while. It was kind of an outgrowth of Suburban Voice.
Yeah.
In the late '80s, this guy Billy Rubin, who was in a band called Haywire, he asked me if I wanted to include a 7-inch with my zine, and they'd pay for the pressing. So it was Haywire and this band called Left Insane on the other side, and that's when I started including records with the zine. And the second one was a split with Blackout Records, and then I just started doing it myself. Just started getting bands, to be on the 7-inch that came with the zine. But I also started a label that, I put out records by. Apart from the zine, I did Kingpin, Third Degree, Said and Done, and Daltonic, and that Isolated, and that Isolated debacle.
Yeah.
So, I stopped doing that after a while, and then I started including CDs with the zine for a while.
Right.
So, I was trying to give people their money's worth. I mean, the zine was really cranky in the late '90s. I was doing like over 100 pages per issue, and doing all of it. But I don't think I could ever do anything on that level again. It's just like I look at my old issues. It's like, how the hell did I do that? I guess I'm older now. I can't really do something like that on that anymore.
It is a lot. It's a lot of. It takes a lot out of you. And and your zine too. Like so, the Boston, like hardcore. The Boston hardcore always seems to be is people talking about SSD, DYS, and sort of that group. And I feel like your zine sort of showed that there was more to Boston than just, that sort of core group of bands, and that, opened me up to that, because, especially by the time I got into stuff, it was '84, and those bands had already just changed into something different. The FUs, I think, were the only one that sort of kept my interest. Or sort of seemed like a more logical progression. Their music, anyway.
Jerry's Kids.
Jerry's. Yeah, of course, Jerry's Kids.
Even Kill, their second album is still pretty good. They were the band that did it the right way by introducing more of a metal thing. What's funny is, except for Jerry's Kids, I didn't interview any of the like legendary Boston hardcore bands. I interviewed Dave Smalley from DYS and Springer from SSD in like '93 for my 11th anniversary issue because I didn't get a 10th anniversary one out. But I was it wasn't just like the Boston, quote unquote Boston crew bands. I mean, I was friendly with them, but I knew them and all that. But I was friendly with bands like Psycho and Cancerous Groves and PTL Club and some of the some bands from the Burbs and
Siege.
got to know.
Remember them?
Siege,
live.
Siege were great.
Yeah.
They're one of the greatest live bands.
Yeah.
And they didn't even really get their due back then. it was funny. They became like this legendary band. They didn't really catch on in Boston for a while, but like overseas, you started. They only had a demo out, and these people in like overseas, like really were influenced by them. I mean, Napalm Death, pretty much influenced by Siege. I remember when I met Barney, their vocalist, like in the early '90s, when I was seeing Napalm Death, he was excited because a member of Siege was at the show, and he said, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be playing music.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was kind of mind blowing.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I always try to be somewhat more diverse. I mean, I was mainly a punk zine, but I covered different types of music. I had a kind of a broad brush, and unfortunately, it went a little off. It went a little off in a direction that was kind of lame, and I started embracing like more of like kind of like the grunge and metalish stuff in the late '80s, early '90s, and it's like I still don't know why I would ever interview a band like Living Color for my zine.
I was doing that with this podcast. For when I started it, I kind of wanted to do punk and hardcore people or metal, and then I kind of sort of went a few different directions, and now I kind of want to just steer it back to punk and hardcore and metal, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you remember this. I had a spin-off from Suburban Voice called The Bludgeoned Ear. It was a metal zine, like a really small metal zine. Yeah, it started as a little segment in Suburban Voice, and this is like the lady, Andy was my co-editor there, and but it's got too hard to do two zines at once, and I was having trouble getting content, and doing phone interviews wasn't much fun. So I eventually started to fold metal coverage back into Suburban Voice again.
Yeah.
But I mean, the late '80s, early '90s was kind of a weird time for the zine.
Yeah.
It's like writing about, more like, I guess you could say, grunge type stuff, or like rock type stuff. But then a few things happened. Number one, I heard the New Bomb Turks in 1992 or '93, and that really got me back into like kind of a rock, kick-ass punk.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really kind of got me back to the roots, more back to like the DIY punk and hardcore stuff, was seeing a band from Cleveland called Nine Shocks Terror.
Oh yeah.
In '97, and it was just one of those times. Occasionally you have like these epiphany, is that the term, or like moments that like musical moments where you see a band that you're familiar with, and it's like they just knock your socks off, and that's what happened with Nine Shocks, and that got me much more back into exploring underground punk and hardcore, and that's kind of the direction I followed after that.
So you never steered from that, because a lot of people sort of jumped off and just there's a cutoff line for. I know there's like certain eras of hardcore that I love and know more about than later eras or early eras, just because of my age, or that's how it is with most people. But I never got in, I always kind of looked down on people that were just kind of like, hardcore ended when I stopped going.
I can't stand that attitude either.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little burnt out on old school hardcore. I mean, everything goes in cycles and all that. And I mean, the stuff that still sticks with me the most, of course, is the stuff I got into in the late '70s and early '80s, U.S. hardcore, and, U.S. and international hardcore, and the early punk stuff. I mean, that'll always be the stuff that I love, pretty much things between like '77 and '84. But I never, there's a lot of stuff I got into later on that really hasn't aged well for me. Like, some of that late '80s New York hardcore and straight edge stuff hasn't aged well for me. There are a few exceptions.
Yeah.
I actually found a new appreciation for Youth of Today. Their second album, We're Not In This Alone, is just so raw, pissed off sound.
Yeah, you know what? You introduced me to that. When we did the Shattered Silence reunion in 2015. I remember you were talking. I think you were mentioning there was a band that covered that whole record. And,
the Repos. There's a band. Yeah. I mean, everything goes in cycles, and it's recycled. And sometimes, if a band like does the old stuff sound really well, if they like add a certain edge to it or whatever, it'll still stick out to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm always, looking for different things, like, get more into like post-punk and just different to have, punk attitude or that kind of feel or whatever, but isn't just regurgitating the same thrash.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Just basically stuff that still has an edge to it. Maybe, I'm attracted more towards, like more raw and rougher sounding stuff in recent years. I don't like anything that's really too polished or overproduced. A lot of punk and hardcore stuff is like, way overproduced. It's like, that's not what it's supposed to sound like. I want to go back to like what the first Negative Approach 7-inch sounded like. That just raw, nasty sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Were you into that?
I mean,
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. What?
No, I was gonna say, we're talking about new records. I just picked up that Seized Up record. Have you listened to that band?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, Clifford from Blast. That's a good record.
You were talking about Blast before, but that's a great record. They're doing something for older guys. It just sounds fresh. It's cool.
Yeah, it's good. It's actually a little more produced than what I'm into. So you've got that kind of clean production, but the songs are just they have a real edge to it. I mean, those guys are in the 50s. They still sound as angry and irritated at the world as ever.
Definitely.
I'll tell you something though. It's like when Trump got elected, people said, "Oh, punk's going to be back again. Hardcore's going to return. We're going to have this big resurgence of political punk and hardcore." And it's like, first of all, that stuff's never really gone away. There's always been bands who have expressed outrage at what's going on in the world. And the other thing is, a lot of these bands that like tried to do anti-Trump stuff, it was very forced and very obvious and not clever at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some good good songs that took exception with Trump's policies and him, but they were a little more subtle, a little more clever about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what appeals to me. Not the ones that just go and say "fuck you, Donald Trump."
Yeah,
it's like
that's too
something
easy.
Something a little more clever. I mean, there's this group I like called ISS, which is short for In School Suspension, and it's like I said, but I'm always looking for different sounds. It's two guys and one guy. It's like all of these, like they build their songs on samples, like different punk samples and all that, with like really clever lyrics. And they had a song called Barren Wasteland, Barron.
Yeah.
That's kind of a clever way to do that.
Nice.
Yeah. But there'll always be people, expressing outrage. It wasn't like, hardcore disappeared, political hardcore disappeared after the Reagan era, and now it's going to make a big comeback.
Right.
It's always been there.
Yeah. Speaking of lyrics, some of the stuff we listen to as, like, I was thinking about a band like the Meat Men. They were like, oh my God! Like Ian MacKaye must be mortified that he's on that Tesco V solo record. He's literally on that record with Lesbian Death Dirge and all that stuff. But like a band like that couldn't exist now, but I can still listen to it. Yeah.
I mean, look, the early stuff, it appeals to like the immature, like 13-year-old or whatever. You could definitely get away with some stuff back then, and it's like one of those things like I listen to and I kind of hate myself for liking it. I know what side I'm on and all that, but I don't really. Yeah, they probably have a tough time getting away with some of the stuff they did back then. Same with like the Angry Samoans, their album. I mean, the Dickies got in trouble a few years ago. They got into an argument with at the Warped Tour. They like got into an altercation with some people who accused them of being sexist, and the singer kind of lost his temper and like yelled, like used some very misogynistic language towards the woman. But basically you're thinking like, boy, couldn't get away with this shit now. Like Lesbian Death Dirge, like, but I mean, crippled children suck. Blow me jaw. There's an acquaintance of mine who's a Rastafarian and took great offense at me posting "Blow Me Jaw" on Facebook a few years ago. I think I ended up taking it down. It was a different era, and I can understand why some younger people might not get the joke. And it's like so sometimes you got to be careful of what you say to younger people. Or people in general. I really hate the term political correctness because to me it's basically like, bigoted assholes using it as an excuse to act like bigoted assholes.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And, my sense of humor might be a little bit, I guess non-PC at times, but I don't. Yeah. Like I said, I'm blabbering. Hopefully you can edit this. I'm sure you will.
No.
Yeah. I mean, God, it's like I think back at some of these bands and some of these songs I liked back then, and I cringe a little bit. And I tend to avoid playing them on my radio show. And, oh, you didn't ask me about my radio show yet.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to continue on the lyrics too, like about. Do you remember when there was like punk rock has mostly been left leaning, but there was sort of a period in the '80s where some sort of right wing lyrics started showing up in the scene. Do you think that has a place in this music?
No, I don't think right wing. I think conservative punk is an oxymoron because to me, some people say, "Oh, punk means no rules. It means doing what you want."
Right.
Something new is the authority. To me, I think punk really shaped my ethics, shaped the way I looked at the world. In terms of like political views, and like I said, I don't take it at face value anymore. But it definitely spurred me to, read up and find out more about stuff. But it also, I think, instilled a sense of ethics, a sense of fairness, doing things for yourself, not being co-opted, but also, treating people decently, not embracing racism or sexism or xenophobia, or anything like that. And to me, conservative punk, I don't think it's very punk to be supporting authoritarianism. I don't think it's very punk to be a homophobe or a misogynist or anything like that.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's not punk. That's so. But in terms of right-wing lyrics, there's some bands, starting to, I guess, express some kind of right-wing sentiments, like Agnostic Front on their second album, Cause for Alarm. They had the song Public Assistance, which is an anti-welfare song, and all that. And that definitely caused some friction and all that. But it's just, and then you have like the hardline bands, like the extreme straight edge bands that have like anti-abortion songs and saying people all that stuff is really reactionary. So, there are bands over the years that have had reactionary lyrics and more conservative leaning lyrics, and I don't want anything to do with that stuff. Yeah.
Cool. And so let's talk about the radio show Sonic Overload. Yeah.
So I wanted to be a DJ since I was a little kid. I mean, this is really embarrassing. When I was a teenager, I used to do imaginary top 10 countdowns and tape them, just like Casey Kasem, my American Top 40. Yeah. So, but I mean, once in a while, do guest appearances. I've gone to do guest appearance on some college radio shows. And when I was a senior in high school, one of the local stations had some people from my, 4 or 5 of us from my class go down and do like a 2-hour show on the station, and one of the guys spent 40 minutes playing Steely Dan, so I didn't really leave a lot of time for the rest of us. I still talk to that guy, and I still bust his balls about it when I talk to him. But what's interesting is he likes some punk stuff now. But anyway, so in '98 or so, there were a couple of guys I knew who went to Masconomet High School. And they had a radio station there, and they invited me up to do a guest appearance with them. And it went really well, so I started doing the show with them every week for the rest of the year until I graduated. And then shortly after that, I found out about this community station that was starting in town called Alston Brighton Free Radio. And it was like I said, low power AM station, only reached a few blocks, but they were having different people come in and do different types of shows, and that's when I I got my slot there, and the show was originally called Inflammable Material, but I have a difficult time pronouncing that word, so I changed the name to Sonic Overload a few months later. Eventually, that station, for all intents and purposes, became a pirate station because we juiced the antenna. And so it got like 50 watts, which isn't that much, but it did reach a little bit. So the station stayed open until 2005, and it closed. And I decided I wanted to keep the show going on my own, so I bought some DJ stuff, and I've been recording the show here ever since for the last 15 years. Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, I it's 2 hours every week. I upload a new show on Monday. And I try to, I say my show is punk, hardcore, garage, and other loud music. So, and I play a little bit of everything. I'll even, play some of the metal stuff I grew up on. I'll play, new wave stuff. I'll play synth stuff. It's pretty much just a little bit of everything. I don't want to just play one style of music.
And it's always, I notice it's always topical. Like if something's going on that week, a lot of the themes of, if there's something going on in the news or something, you'll a lot of times you'll follow that with some of the music on there. So that's pretty cool.
Occasionally. Occasionally. I don't do it all the time. I had a real, but I've had some fun with that. After a few weeks ago, for instance, when they invaded the Capitol, I had some fun with that, putting together some audio. But I'll do sound clips occasionally or thematic sets or whatever. But not all the time. Sometimes sometimes I think it should just be a respite from real life too.
And if people want to listen to this, where can we listen to it?
It's at www.sonicoverload.net, and I also I have an archive of shows that I keep up, like the previous 3 or 4 shows at sonicoverload.blogspot.com. And like I said, I upload a new 2-hour show every Monday night.
Nice.
It's a lot of fun. It's more fun than writing, to be honest. I think I've been going through a period of writer's block over the last year or so, and I haven't probably been quite as productive as I'd like. But the radio show is still a lot of fun to do. So, and it seems like during this time of COVID, people are looking for more stuff to listen to. So I think my listenership has gone up a fair amount over the last year.
This is a perfect time for that. People definitely need that kind of stuff.
I'll tell you something. Speaking of COVID, I really miss going to shows.
Yeah, I know, right? What was the last show you saw?
Now, this is funny. The last band I saw was called Pandemics, Pandemix.
Oh, really?
I saw them at this space called the Banshee Den, which is that's the other thing. I don't go to shows at clubs that much anymore. Occasionally I will. But most of the shows I've gone to see in recent years have been at community centers, art spaces, people's basements, other spaces. And it's funny, I was talking to the bass player from Pandemics a month or two ago, and he said they were thinking of changing the name because of what had happened. And I said, no. I said, you're a punk band. You should keep the name. It's cool.
Yeah, especially spelled like that.
What was the last band? What was the last show you went to?
That band Today Is the Day played in Providence with the Obsessed with Wino. So
wow, that's a cool show.
Yeah. And that was February 28th. So,
I mean that's another thing I do a lot of. Besides the writing and the DJing, being in bands every once in a while, is I also do my own photography. I've been doing my digital photography since around 2004 to use for my zine, my blog, and also my Instagram page and all that, which is at Suburban_Voice. That's my Instagram page. That's something I really enjoy doing. It's like when I don't take a camera to a show, it almost feels weird to me now. It's also really gratifying. And it's really gratifying when bands want to use my photos for, record inserts or whatever, or other print outlets or whatever. I find I'm willing to, give it to them. Just ask me ahead of time. I'm fine with it.
I think
that's a lot of fun.
It's important, I think, to document all this stuff, and and you've been doing it, most of your life now, and I think, because it's not this stuff isn't going to be in like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and stuff like that, but it's very important to millions of people and always has been since it started and always will be. And
I agree.
so it's cool to have, all this. That's kind of why I like to do these too, and just have people tell their story that might have had an impact on the scene or music or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a central part of my life for the last almost 40 years, and even longer than that. I mean, it's something I'm really passionate about more than just about anything else. And it's got me, it sounds corny and all that, but it has kept me going. And I've always been drawn to high energy rock and roll, and that's mainly that's why I was drawn to punk and hardcore, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And as far as like keeping I was gonna say, as far as like keeping documents of this stuff, and you have you're known as having a pretty I mean I've seen it as well, a pretty insane collection of music, and
good thing we have a house, because I don't know where the hell to keep it.
Yeah,
and we're running out of space as it is. I mean, I've pretty much kept everything. I've kept all my flyers. I've kept all my fanzines and magazines, and they're pretty well organized too.
Yeah.
So I have my photo archive going back to the 80s. Like I said, I've been doing my own digital photography, but I was doing my own photography on film since like the mid 90s. I had some great photographers who used to contribute stuff in the 80s and 90s. I had some really reliable photographers here, or people would send me stuff if I needed it, but I eventually decided I needed to do it myself, kind of take control of it myself, and that's been the way that's how it's been ever since.
Yeah. Yes. What was Cindy Mendez? She was one of the photographers. That was great.
Cindy was. I'll give credit to the others: Chris Carilli, Lisa Pretignano, who was from Western Mass. Laura Black did some photos for me, and one of the best was J.J. Gonson, who's had a pretty impressive career as a photographer.
She was on that podcast before I had her on her.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. Great person. Really nice person. Very, very talented photographer. One of the best whose work I ever ran.
Yeah. She took the picture of that, the cover of that Youth of Today record we were talking about, I think, right? That second album. The We're Not in the Same.
No, first one. No, Break Down the Walls was hers. I don't know if that.
No, I think that's Bruce Rhodes. I think hers is the.
No.
One.
I think it was Chris. I think it was Chris Carilli who did stuff for the zine.
Yeah.
And what's funny is you can see Mark McKay in the background there.
Yeah.
I was right behind him. I didn't get in that. I didn't get in the picture.
Yeah.
The other one I also just missed out.
Part of my head's on that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say part of my head is on that record. But
I was behind Mark, and the back of the FU's third record, Do We Really Want to Hurt You? I was just cropped out of the shot on the right side. It's like the last guy on the right. I was right behind him.
Oh, so, is Ed Walters in that?
Yeah, I was right behind Ed at that show.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, I was right behind Ed.
That's a cool picture.
Just missed out.
Yeah.
Yep, just missed out on that one.
Yeah. But so you've kept everything.
Yeah.
And this is
records, flyers. Yep. I kept everything. Pretty much.
Yeah.
And still, like I said, it's pretty well organized. I have a complete set of Maximum Rock and Roll, except for number 1, which I have a printout of.
Yeah. Huh.
But I mean, I sold some of it off a few years ago. I sold some old zines and some old flyers and some old posters, and people pay crazy money for that stuff.
Yeah. I know. I was selling I remember when my brother was doing eBay. I remember he sold like a Tori Amos record flat. He got a record for like $90 or something, crazy like that. He probably had 50 of them that he got from Rocket. When we all worked there.
Yeah, I mean T-shirts too. I mean, especially like late '80s New York hardcore bands. I had a Straight Ahead T-shirt that I sold for $265. And I've sold some other shirts for like between $100 and $200.
Yeah.
When I was selling posters, I had this huge Sonic Youth poster, probably 4 by 6 feet, and it was I forget which album it was, and it was the original cover that they had to edit because of copyright or something, and I sold that poster for like $175.
That's crazy.
I mean, hey, it helped, and I needed
Yeah.
the dough at the time, and
Yeah.
I don't really regret selling that stuff. You know, maybe a few things, but
Yeah.
yeah, I managed to keep most of my collection together, but I sold off a few things a few years ago
Yeah.
because I needed the dough.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all here.
And this is
I really dread if we ever have to move.
I know, right? Yeah, is Ellen
I don't
ready
want to think
to
about it.
tell you to start shrinking the collection down yet?
Not yet. In fact, it's kind of expanded a little bit. There's some records now in the dining room, a couple shelves in the dining room now too.
There you go.
No, she's been really good about it. Yeah, I should mention Ellen. I mean, she's a social worker, and like I said, most wonderful person in the world. And she's not really into punk that much, but she understands the attitude and she loves the ethics behind it.
Yeah.
You know, when we've had bands staying with us, she's really enjoyed, meeting bands from around the world who've stayed with us. So
she's always supported you with all this stuff, yeah.
She's always supported me. So she's been very supportive, never told me to stop doing it or anything like that. She's been, very, just awesome about it.
Yeah.
And she used to go to a lot of shows with me when we were younger. She doesn't go with me that much anymore. But I mean, she got to see bands like Minor Threat. And
I know. I was going to say
Flag
she's probably seen cooler bands than most people that like that. Really would love to see those bands.
Yep. She went to quite a few shows with me back then.
Yeah.
And she still goes with me, every once in a great while she'll go with me to a show. I'm not going to take her to a basement show or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'll take her to a place where, as she would say, she can avoid being smushed.
Yeah. And she was.
Yeah, I mean that's.
She was nice enough to let us horrify your in-laws too by performing it at your wedding.
Oh God, yeah. Shattered Silence, the 2-song set at my wedding. Yeah, we cleared the room with the wedding reception. We cleared the room in like 30 seconds. That was awesome.
Old elderly Jewish people with their walkers trying to get her scurry across the dance floor as quickly as possible. And I think we did Personality Crisis, a cover.
Yeah, Personality Crisis, and then we did one of our own songs.
Tooling for AIDS.
Yeah, we got to use. Yeah, Tooling for. Oh God, yeah, that's one of those. It's one of those Meatmen songs that we should definitely play now. God. That was getting married was wonderful, but that was definitely the high point besides getting to play with you guys at my wedding reception.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. But she's wonderful. I mean, she's been supportive of everything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And she completely, gets it and understands it and supports it.
Yeah.
So,
and you've been with her all this time.
She has her interests and her passions. I have mine, and we also try to find time, to do things together as well. And that's, I think that's the success. I think that's the reason we've been together as long as we have.
Yeah,
definitely lucked out there. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's great, man.
Hang on, drink a water here.
Yeah. I just have one more.
Oh, that's better.
One more question.
Yeah. Okay, go.
Do you think is Tom Brady going to win another Super Bowl? Are you rooting for him with Tampa Bay?
Yes, I am. And a lot of people wonder why, because he's a Trump supporter. He's done all these horrible things and all that. Okay, here's why I'm rooting for Tom Brady. Number one, the Patriots did not want to re-sign him. They did not want him here anymore.
Yeah.
He wanted to leave. So it's like this is basically the revenge tour. And I'm definitely into it. I mean, I'll be a Patriots fan forever. I mean, I've been a Patriots fan since 1970, and I still root for them. But I kind of want to see Tom Brady win this.
Yeah.
Now, is this going to be posted before or after the Super Bowl?
Before. Yeah, it'll be before.
Before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to make a prediction?
I'm not. I know I'm going to probably be wrong. I'll say Tampa Bay is going to win, but it's going to be close.
Okay.
We'll see. I'd like them to.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think they could beat Kansas City, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I won't feel if Tampa loses. I won't feel bad because Kansas City are a great team. I love their coach. I think Patrick Mahomes is a generational player.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's like, how can you be into punk and like sports? Because I am an unabashed sports fan. I'd watch football and baseball, and some punks were like, used to get beaten up by the jocks or whatever in high school. Can't understand that.
I know.
And it's like, see, here's the thing. I'm not a jock. I used to play sports myself badly, but I used to play some sports when I was younger, and I just enjoy watching the games. It's once again a diversion from real life, like music. It's something I enjoy. You can't just like have a one-track mind and just do one thing only.
Yeah.
I know people that only do music, only want to talk about music, and that gets boring after a while.
Yeah. I feel like when I first got into punk and hardcore, I kind of put sports on the back burner because I feel like I thought I'd be judged, especially as like a teenager. So I was like, oh yeah, I hate 7 Seconds had that I hate sports song, and then and then I just started getting back into the Red Sox and the Dodgers. And so.
Yeah, and what's so funny is Kevin from 7 Seconds is a big sportsman. He has a basketball tattoo on his leg. And he thanked the Sacramento Kings on one of the records. I mean, it's so funny. I hate sports. He talks about, he takes a dig at Muhammad Ali, who is probably one of the most significant social figures of the 20th century. So it's just being young and pissed off. Well, he was probably like 18 years old when he wrote that song.
Exactly.
20 years old.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be held responsible.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff took place, like Minor Threat, guilty of being white and that kind of stuff was.
Talking about a song that hasn't aged well.
Yeah, I know.
Talking about a song that people to this day say, "Oh, Ian's a racist for writing that song." And I said, dude was right. Dude was 19 years old when he wrote that song. Do you think you should hold Ian, who's almost 60 years old, judge him on something he wrote when he was a kid? Essentially, I mean, I wouldn't want people to. I wouldn't want it to be the way I was when I was 18 or 19.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be judged on that,
Yeah, definitely.
It's like even some of these politicians or like, sports figures who tweeted stupid shit when they were like 16 or 17. It's like, that was dumb, but maybe they should have known better. But if they own it and say they're not like that anymore, fine. But I mean, I make no apologies for liking what I like. If you don't like it, too bad. And it's, I can't just, I love talking about music. I've been doing it for the better part of 2 hours. It's, like I said, it's my passion, but I like talking about, movies and politics and sports. I have other interests besides just music.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as we get older, within like the punk scene too, you find that's what you talk about with, other people that you might have met in the music scene. Now is sports and politics. You're not talking about how awesome the Bad Brains are anymore at this point,
Well, I still talk about how awesome the Bad Brains are with people. I love talking with people I knew, from quote unquote my era, reminiscing, and it really. I try not to pull the old man card and brag about the shows I saw, but the people. I'll do it when people ask me about it, or if people like start bagging on my age, and I start saying, really, well, here's the bands you didn't get to see, and you never will get to see.
I know.
Although you can't always say that anymore because, the Misfits still played a few years ago, so now you can see them.
Well, anytime someone says they saw the Misfits, I mean, even though I was fine that they did that, and it's people were able to see them as youngsters, but. Whenever someone says I saw the Misfits and they're like 26 years old, I'm like, nah, I don't think you did really though.
You did. I mean, if you went, if you had a good time, it's good for you. That's all that matters. If you enjoyed it, fine. Yeah. If somebody gave me, I'll be honest, if somebody gave me free tickets to go see them, the Misfits reunion shows a few years ago, I would have gone. What the hell, But I'm not going to pay a lot of money for it at this point in my life. I paid $5 to see them in 1982. I'm good. I'm all set.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the picture of you on stage with Minor Threat, so I think you can. That's
one of my favorite
from bragging rights. It's a good.
Yeah. That's Jason. I don't think you really asked me about this, but I'll ask you. So Al, do you feel kind of strange, like going to these DIY punk shows where most of the people are half or less than half your age at this point?
Yeah.
You're almost, I'm 60 years old. I'm still going to see bands in basement. Most of the people there are a lot younger than me, and sometimes people might think, well, what's the old guy doing here? Is he trying to creep on or scale on young girls or whatever? And I had a few people like insinuate that.
Oh, Jesus.
And absolutely ridiculous. And I go because I want to see the bands play.
Yeah.
People want to talk to me and hang out. I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah.
If they don't, fine. But some people seem to not have an issue with it. If other people do, I don't care. I'm not bothering anyone. I just want to go see bands play.
Yeah, exactly.
And most people seem to be pretty accepting. Yeah. I've gotten to know I always meet people over the years. I get to know younger people, and they may not be close friends or anything, but people I enjoy speaking with at shows or interacting with on social media.
Yeah.
So it's still something I enjoy.
Yeah.
Although I'll admit, maybe in recent years I'm starting to feel a little bit more self-conscious about it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there are some people older than me that also go to those shows.
Yeah.
I think of Mike Bastarash, who produced the Boston Not LA records and the FSD records, and Mike and his wife Chris still go to DIY punk shows. I still see them there.
Oh wow.
Yep, and they got a few years on me too. Like they're quite a bit older than me, in fact.
Wow,
so,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So it's cool. It's awesome, and I'm not the only old timer there. And I know some people, who are starting to stick around into their 40s, who I've known now for 15, 20 years. So other people are starting to grow old in the punk scene as well. So it's cool. Yeah.
I know. I was in a record store in Los Angeles a few years ago, and I was like 2 or 3 teenagers in there, the punk kids, and one of them had a Siege patch on his bag, and of course I went up to him. I was like, "Oh, you like Siege?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh yeah, I saw them a bunch of times." He was just like, "Oh, cool," and just walked away. I was like, "Okay, I should just shut up."
Yeah.
Sometimes people just
Siege.
I'm not impressed.
Oh yeah, Siege. I have a handwritten lyric sheet of their demo on the back of the flyer. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, hey, I'm bragging there. Whatever.
Yeah. Do you remember?
I do.
I had a friend in Swampscott named Mark McLaughlin. He lived on Paradise Road, and his cousin was Kevin Mahoney. The late Kevin Mahoney.
I don't remember. I don't know him right now.
But his and I kind of remembered this recently, but Kevin Mahoney's sister is married to Rick Jones from Jerry's Kids, so those bands are kind of connected.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a weird hardcore connection there to two amazing, influential bands,
Oh God, Jerry's Kids! I remember I saw them do a show maybe 6 years ago, and Rick, the singer, was talking about. No, this was in Quincy at President's Rock Club.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, and Rick was talking about Kevin, and he dedicated a song to him, and he was like getting really emotional about it. He was so emotional, he took the mic stand and smashed it on the ground, and like the base of the mic stand, like chunks of it flew off, and like it just barely missed me. It hit the guy next to me in the forehead. Like there's a picture of the guy with like a bloody face, laughing about it. But yeah.
Wow.
Well, this guy, it's like people will ask, so who's your favorite band? All right, I'll tell you. My favorite band of all time is Discharge. I finally decided this in the last few years.
Yeah.
My favorite local hardcore band of all time is Jerry's Kids.
Yeah.
And they were great back then, and they seem to go into hibernation and come out of hibernation every 5 or 6 years, and they're still the greatest band.
Yeah.
And I don't believe for 1 second they've played their last show. I think they're going to play again.
Yeah. Yeah, they were.
I'm going to get them to play again.
I hope. They, I remember when I was working in Beverly a few years ago, and I remember I would be driving to work at 5:30, 6 in the morning. Every once in a while, I'd see Bob Sensi on a 10-speed bike. Be like the dead of winter, because he's probably taking he's from Beverly, or he lives up there now. But I just remember driving by and thinking, all these people are driving by that guy, and they don't know that was in one of the greatest hardcore bands of all time, and he's just driving down Rantoul Street right now on a 10-speed bike. But
I always love. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that band was always my favorite live Boston.
They're great, and I don't think they even sometimes it's like they recorded an EP in late '82. In fact, when I interviewed Rick, he was talking about, oh yeah, we're doing a 5-song EP that we just recorded, and two of those songs ending up on the radio, but it never got released. They ended up re-recording. They ended up doing another recording for the album that ended up being "Is This My World?"
Yeah.
And that got scrapped, and it's never come out. I have the 2 songs, but everything else, and those songs are unreleased otherwise.
Yeah.
And I guess in recent years they talked about, maybe doing a release, but it's like really strange. Like just how they haven't done that or tried to cash in on it. I suppose you got to respect that, but I really hope that they do eventually decide that stuff needs to be heard, because it's history. I mean,
I was aware. I was going to say, I was made
Go.
aware of some Jerry's Kids song I had never heard before, semi-recently, and I think that what was. And someone might have uploaded it to YouTube or something, but I think it was from that. Because what are the songs?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was Boston out of LA. There was like a 13-song session, and those songs surfaced.
Yeah.
But, the 2 songs I have are the original version of "Tear It Up" and another song called "We Don't Need It." And
We Don't Need It. That's the one. Yeah.
Oh, those versions kick so much ass, and "Is This My World" is awesome. But these also need to come out at some point.
Yeah.
But I think I might have uploaded those. I can't remember. Maybe not. But anyway, those definitely need to see the light of day.
Yeah, We Don't Need It was in their live set. I think it's in that live when they played that. You can watch that on YouTube. The Misfits channel show. I think they played on that.
Yep. Yeah, God, that was great.
Yeah. You were at that show?
I was. I have a flyer for it on the wall too. Yeah, Misfits. Yeah. In fact, that might have been the show where Jerry smashed his bass, and Mark Tovio ended up with the headstone.
Right? Yeah.
I think he might still have it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I hate to think he'd like retire if he sold that.
I know, right? Jeez, that's crazy.
Can you imagine how much something like that would go for?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
I know. I sold all my Misfits. I've rebuying records recently. You've probably seen. I've been posting some of them on Instagram.
Yeah,
I haven't been spending that much money, but because I don't have that kind of income right now. But I'm just trying to fill in some of the blanks. But the 3 biggest blanks are, the kids will have their say, and the Jerry's Kids record and Brotherhood. But I have all the other Exclaim and just other random stuff that I still have the SOA 7-inch, one of the press. I think it's the 3rd pressing.
Yeah. No, I mean the thing is, I have all the old records, but I play them. It's not a museum. I actually take out my records and listen to them. I have a nice turntable with a good cartridge. Yeah. That's the way that stuff should be listened to.
Yeah. Definitely.
Pops, crackles and pops and all. When I do my radio show, I will play the original pressings because that's the way they're meant to be heard.
Yeah.
I handle them very carefully, but I play my records. Yeah.
Now, this is a morbid question to end this on, I guess.
Okay.
So you have this collection of all this stuff, and as you get older, is there a plan for where that will go at some point? Yeah,
I have a few people who I would trust that would give. God forbid I go. First of all, I keep the rare records in one box. Ellen knows what this shit is worth. So nobody's going to be able to come in here and buy my Minor Threat records for $2.
Right. Yeah.
But there are a few people I trust who would buy my collection and pay a fair price. So I think that's probably what would end up happening. Some people have said, I should donate my zine archive or whatever, to university or something, and maybe that would happen. I'm going to be here for a while, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do have a lot of stuff, and it'd probably be a daunting task. There are a few people I would trust to do that, and there are a few people I would not trust to purchase my collection. I won't say who that is, but there are definitely some people that Ellen knows I should not be able to get within 5 miles of the record. But there are some people I would trust to take care of things. And I also have some family members and close friends who would be able to have whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
them first. But I've definitely made some plans, made some arrangements.
Yeah. That's good.
But I'm going to be here for, hopefully going to be,
I didn't mean
what's
to bring
that?
that. I didn't mean, yeah.
Oh, no, people ask that all the time. I
Yeah.
think about it all the time. Alan says, what am I going to do? What are we going to do with all this stuff?
Right.
It's like, well, so I said, okay, well, you should call this person. I trust him to give you a fair price. This other person would give you a fair price.
Yeah.
I know a few people who would pay what the stuff's worth and would probably gladly pay what the stuff is worth.
Yeah.
So
I know. I remember being at visiting my dad's a few years ago, and we would go to his storage space every once in a while and clean it out. And I remember telling him, can we start throwing more of this stuff out, because this is the stuff I'm going to be cleaning out after you die when I fly back here to clean your. He's like, yeah, I know. So he's been throwing more stuff out, thankfully.
Yeah. I mean, I probably should, pare down the collection a bit and all that. But the thing is, a lot of the stuff I want to sell probably isn't going to get me that much. And the stuff that would get me a lot of money, I don't want to part with.
Yeah, exactly.
I can go through only 7-inch boxes or whatever and find all these records that are probably worth 10 cents each.
Right.
It's like putting 200 copies. Oh, $10.
Yeah.
Well, what's the point? Might as well just keep them around.
Yeah. What's your most treasured record you think that you have?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't know. Probably the Negative Approach 7-inch is probably my most treasured, because it's just so great. It's my favorite, and every time I put it on to this day, it still kicks my ass.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what some of my most treasured records is my dear friend Jane Simpkin, who got killed on 9/11.
Yeah.
I inherited her record collection.
Yeah.
And other magazines and zines and all that. I inherited all that stuff, and I'm sitting here and I'm looking across, and there's a Circle Jerks drawing that she did, like a sketch, and I got that hanging on my wall there, and that's worth probably just as much or more than anything else I have hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's funny though. I did, I sold off a few things of hers over the years, duplicates, and my youngest nephew Kobe recently got into records. He bought a turntable and is starting to buy records, and he has a pretty diverse musical taste. Much to my pleasant surprise, he was talking about how much he liked My Bloody Valentine. So
wow.
I had some duplicates. I had some duplicates of Jane's records. And some of Jane's records were duplicates. I'm thinking, well, it's what better place for them to go than to my nephew? So I gave him a few records. I gave him a Jesus and Mary chain. And I said, if you like My Bloody Valentine, you're gonna like Jesus and Mary chain.
Oh,
and,
nice.
He likes a few of the other things.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I gave him these records, see how he likes them, and if he likes those, then I'll go to the next step and give him something maybe a little bit more abrasive or not quite as accessible sounding.
Give him a copy of Where the Meat Man and You Suck. On
I'm thinking more of maybe The Fall. Get him into The Fall a bit.
Yeah.
I think he'd like them. He's a smart kid. He's very creative. He's a writer, and he I think is someone that would appreciate the wit and wisdom of Mark E. Smith.
Yeah. How old is he? Your nephew?
He's 20. He's
in
college. It's funny. His older brother Josh, who's now 25. I tried to get him into punk and hardcore when he was a kid, but no luck. I mean, I didn't really try with Kobe, but now Kobe's music fan, and he's so I'm working on him a little bit, giving him some records, seeing if I can expand his And I'm proud of him. It's I was talking with him. I talk with him about music all the time. He knows his stuff. I'm impressed.
Nice.
He's very creative. He's theater. He's got a book of poetry coming out. He wants to be a writer. So he's a creative kid.
Nice.
Maybe he can help me someday.
Yeah, I know, right? Maybe he's the one that can kick you in the ass to put the book out.
Maybe could happen. So, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely my my most cherished cherished stuff.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was interviewed for a movie called Records Collecting Dust 2
Oh,
a
yeah.
few years ago.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
And they said if there was a fire in your house, which 3 records would you take?
Yeah.
And so I grabbed the box that has all the rare records. I just take the whole box and get out and leave with that. But one of the records I took out was by this band called The State, who were from Michigan.
Yeah.
And Jane went to the University of Michigan, and so she got to know, like, you know, all those Midwest hardcore people like Negative Approach and the Necros. And she used to send me stuff, and she sent me that State record, which is it's an all-time favorite. It's so underrated, but just the fact she sent it to me, it's something I got from her.
Yeah.
Means it's probably the most treasured record.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
So it's not necessarily the value. It's just
right.
You know, it's something that makes you think of a certain time. And when I put on that Negative Approach record, I think of seeing them at Gallery East and seeing, you know, 20-year-old scary John Brannon up there. You know.
Yeah.
And by the way, he
Now go ahead.
Well, I was going to say Negative Approach, like, still one of my favorites. John Brannon is not that much younger than me, and he's still the most fearsome vocalist. One of the most fearsome, scary, intimidating vocalists.
Yeah.
And what's funny is he's a really nice guy.
Yeah, yeah.
A really nice guy, but man, he is just intimidating.
Yeah. And a lot of all these records are most of them are ones that you bought when you were a kid, right? Or not when you were a kid, but when you were that Negative Approach 7-inch. Is that the one you bought when you came out? Yeah.
Yeah, God. Yep. I mean, like I said, I've been getting records since I was a little kid, and I still have the records I had when I was a little kid. Most of them are beat to shit, but I mean, obviously I pruned stuff out over the years, but I managed to hang on to most of the crucial stuff. And when I first started getting into CDs, I sold off some of my vinyl copies. Like, I don't need the vinyl copies anymore.
Yeah.
And then I kind of started to regret that. So, but luckily, I realized I started to regret it before eBay was really getting off the ground. So I was able to replace a lot of those records cheaply.
Yeah.
Well, not too much money, because I sure as hell wouldn't want to be trying to buy some of those old records now, or ones I missed the boat in the first place.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I pretty much, I collect a little. I mean, if I find like something old and it's not ridiculously expensive, then I might splurge. Although I don't have a lot of money to splurge on records right now either.
Definitely.
But I mean, there's a few records that I said, if I ever hit the lottery, or if I come into a ton of money, there's a few records I would probably be willing to spend a shitload of money to get.
Yeah.
In case you're wondering, Anti-Cymex, Swedish hardcore band, I'd like to get one of their early 7-inches, which would probably cost me 4 figures at this point.
Oh, really? Wow.
If I had the dough, I'd probably do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm lucky that that's one of the advantages of being an old guy. I got to get all those records when I was younger and not have to pay very much for them. Yeah.
I sold my I had a Kids Will Ever Say sealed copy.
I remember that.
Yeah, I sold it for $687 a few years ago, about 8 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that beats the most I got for something by a little. I sold, there was a zine in the late 80s called Schism that was put out by one of the guys from Youth of Teen. Porcelli.
Yeah.
And it was the issue that came with the Project X 7-inch.
Yeah.
And I just, for the hell of it, I posted a picture of it once on Instagram. I didn't have any intention of selling it, but this guy I knew offered me $600 for it. And I took it. I took $600. And the funny thing is, I could probably get more. I could probably get more for that now. I probably could have got more than $600 then. But it's somebody I knew for a long time. He was in a band. He used to send me stuff and always took care of me. So it was worth it.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you remember when I was talking about this with someone recently? I know we were gonna. I was almost gonna end this a few minutes ago, but thinking about Youth of Today. I missed the boat on, because I came in January '84, so I missed all those '83 shows, Minor Threat, the Misfits, and that stuff. But I saw a lot. '84 was a great year for Boston, and '85 was sort of like a lot of that metal type stuff started to come in. But then when Youth of Today hit, for me at least, when they first played here, that felt to me what I thought it was probably like seeing the Minor Threat or the Bat. Like, I remember they were that good live. They were. Did you get that feeling when they played, or were they just like another hardcore band for you?
I like them. I like them, but I also had, I don't know, I didn't find, I felt like I felt like it was like the next generation. I mean, I liked it, embraced, but I never really connected with some of the people in those bands that well. It felt like a little bit exclusionary and a little testy at times. I did a few interviews, and it just, I guess I never really like interacted with them that well. I mean, some of the New York bands, like some of the non-youth crew, straight edge type bands, I did become friendlier with, but it just they were a little bit off-putting to me. I liked it, but I think actually a band like Youth of Today I appreciate more in recent years. Just because just how angry they sounded, and it's like, it's enjoyable, it's fun to listen to. Definitely. I mentioned that Repos record where they re-recorded Well, We're Not in This Alone, and I went back and checked out the original, and it's like, passage of time and passage of any remaining prejudices or biases I might have felt towards that band, or now I can look at it from a distance and it's like, some of these bands are pretty good. Some of them don't hold up very well. Some of that late '80s New York hardcore stuff, to me, to be honest, does not hold up to me that well.
Same here.
Some does, some doesn't. I'll tell you, like I said, some Youth of Today stuff's good. I really like the Raw Deal demo, the band that became Killing Time. That one I can still listen to. That I like. Early Prawn stuff is great. But some of these other late '80s New York hardcore bands, they just don't really do much for me anymore. I've taken a few of them out in recent years. Like, wow, this isn't that great. I'd rather go back and listen to early '80s stuff. It's funny. Anything else? That it?
I guess that's it, man.
2 hours and 8 minutes. And I didn't lose my voice. Amazing. I don't talk this much on my radio show.
Well, we've been we were talking. The things we're recording were at 1:58, so we'll be just at 2 hours. But
2 hours. My God, you're gonna have to do some editing, I think.
I've done some. I did. Steve Karp. He was with Yepaside. I think I did over 2 hours.
Yeah, sure.
He's a good dude.
I know.
But I drove to Connecticut to his house, so I figured I drove this far, I should get two and a half hours soon worth it. But no, that's fine. I know when I listen to a lot of the podcasts I listen to are long, and I'll listen to them over a couple days in the car or whatever. So thanks for doing this, man. It's good. It's obviously good to hear from you. We haven't talked in a bit. So it's good to catch up, and hopefully we can play music too at some point soon.
That'll be fun.